There comes a silent moment when the world seems strange. You get up, go through the motions, answer emails, smile at the appropriate people, and cross off the boxes. However, something starts to hurt in the middle, not like suffering. Absence is more accurate. As if in the haste to become everything for everyone else, a piece of you has been left behind. Have you ever pondered what may occur if I really did choose myself? Not the version that people anticipate, not the persona cultivated for acceptance, not the well-groomed, amiable, and steady person you present in public, but the true you, the one you've covered up with layers of concessions, the one who signs in your stillness, murmurs in your dreams, and occasionally shouts behind your eyes when no one else is around. Becoming who you truly are is the privilege of a lifetime, according to Carl Jung, but suffering is frequently the starting point for that privilege, this profound becoming. You have to unchoose everything that isn't you in order to fully select yourself. And before it feels like freedom, it can feel like death. A fracture marks the start of the voyage. You realize that you're divided. The persona, or outside self, is sufficiently functional. However, a stranger resides beneath it. You are that stranger. Jung referred to this as the process of individuation, which is the ongoing development of the self, a force that exists deep inside the psyche and calls for wholeness. It's not going to help you get better. Self-encounter is what it is. Remembering what has been forgotten is more important than repairing what has been damaged. Making the decision to be yourself is a step towards becoming authentic rather than selfish. However, what does this look like in reality? Perhaps it's the woman who wakes up after years of marriage and discovers that she has centered her entire existence on meeting the wants of another person. In ancient writings and early sketches, her dreams, dormant, gently smothered, to her love meant being erased. She now starts painting again though, not for attention or money, but because she feels the need for color. Or maybe it's the guy who always acted like the one with the strength, the supplier, the person who never shed a tear. Until the grief finally catches up at a red light, Tuesday, without prior notice. And at last he lets the tears fall, not because he is weak, but because he has chosen to forego the delusion that his feelings diminish his manliness. Making your own decisions doesn't necessarily seem like a big rebellion. It can be quiet at times, not visible. It's refusing another taxing commitment. It is reducing the volume of other people's viewpoints. It's taking back an hour to sit quietly and take a deep breath. However, there is a price for this decision, this drastic act of self-return. Jung cautioned that comfort is not the root of individuation. It's the confrontational route, because making the decision to be yourself also entails facing your shadow, the aspects of yourself that you have rejected. Everybody has a shadow. It contains all of the things we suppress, deny, or are afraid of. Our anger, envy, our fears, our forbidden cravings. The majority of people spend their entire lives imposing their shadows, blaming, condemning, and humiliating others. However, making a true self-choice means facing the dragon and looking inward. The paradox is that the energy you need to become full is frequently found in the things you dread most about yourself. One becomes enlightened by making the darkness conscious, not by imagining figures of light. According to Jung, you start to recover yourself the instant you stop escaping from yourself. You understand that when you integrate your anger, it turns into power. Your sorrow deepens. Your anxiety turns into knowledge. Your wounds become transformational portals once they are no longer concealed. All of a sudden, the previous way of living is no longer appropriate. You start to lose friends who only liked the modified version of you. You no longer feel free in the roles you once adhered to. You may even lose the respect of those you have put so much effort into winning over. But something bright starts to emerge in this shedding. Instead of using an inherited script, you start speaking in your own voice. You start making decisions based on the truth rather than duty. You start to feel a strange new calm, one that is characterized by honesty rather than the absence of pain. Most people don't choose this route. More often than not, the world promotes conformity over bravery. However, imitation cannot nourish the spirit. And here's the lovely, agonizing secret. The old self dies when you choose yourself. The mask breaks. The false self vanishes. However, something timeless emerges in its stead. You, not the self that has been conditioned, not the show, not the part, But you, as sacred flame, as spirit, as symbol, self, discovery is a commitment, not a destination, an act of bravery every day, a coming back, a tribute. The world might not comprehend, it might not want to become you, but you don't have to bear that load. Honoring the self, the enormous enigmatic core of who you are that contains the blueprint for your wholeness, is your mission, and you are making a choice for yourself each time you follow that calm, knowing in your chest, respect a boundary, or say yes to your truth. By doing this, you awaken the power that Jung mentioned, the power to become who you really are, not the power to manipulate others. However, there is no easy path to being who you are. It's a spiral, a constant circle back to the locations where you left yourself. Truly, choosing oneself is 1,000 silent revolutions in the soul, not just one epiphany. The psyche doesn't develop all at once, you see. It presents itself in pieces, dreams, instincts, feelings, synchronicity. Each one is a thread in the vast fabric of who you are, and you are following the self when you start to follow those strands, no matter how illogical they may appear. According to Jung, the self is the entirety of the psyche, not just the ego. It encompasses the personal and the archetypal, the light and the shadow, the conscious and the unconscious. There is nothing you can make of it. You find it out, and trust is necessary for that discovery. Have faith in your instincts. Have faith in your body. Have faith in the silent times when the outside world fades and something more profound speaks. It starts with a dream for some people, a symbol that appears repeatedly, a childhood memory that has been forgotten. Not just once, but repeatedly, you see a snake in your nightmares. It scares you at first. Then you recall that the snake is metamorphosis rather than only a threat. Shedding skin, rebirth. The psyche uses symbols to communicate. Additionally, honoring each symbol helps you get closer to your core. Others hear the call with dissatisfaction. Now, the career they previously sought feels like a state of exile. Once exciting, the connection now feels like self-abandonment. Outgrowing what formerly kept you going is not a sign of weakness. In the spring, trees do not cling to dead leaves. Furthermore, you were never intended to remain unchanged. Others discover the way via sickness, exhaustion, fear, panic episodes. When all other voices are disregarded, the body becomes the voice of the soul. What your mouth was never able to convey, your neurological system starts to communicate. I can't keep living this lie. Failure is not what this is. Initiation is this. Rites of passage symbolize transformation in ancient cultures. The initiate would be removed from the town, stripped of their identity, and sent into the dark, only to come out of it a different person, resurrected. We don't have these customs anymore. However, the mind remembers. Additionally, you unintentionally enter that same sacred fire when you make the decision to be yourself. You start confronting the archetypes. You discover your inner child, the naive, playful version of yourself that you long suppressed. They help you rediscover how to wonder, how to feel, and how to trust. You come across the warrior, the aspect of yourself that knows how to stand up for what's right, say no, and defend yourself, even at the expense of your comfort. You welcome the lover, not in the romantic sense, but rather the aspect of yourself that yearns for presence, beauty, and closeness. Eventually, you will encounter the sage, the wise inner being who sees with the soul's eyes rather than the rational ones. These aren't just dreams. These are global blueprints that are engraved in your mind. These are what Jung referred to as archetypes, and they exist inside every one of us, just waiting to be remembered. You awaken them when you choose yourself. You are what they are. You transform into a moving myth rather than just a personality. It's not always poetic, though. Some days you'll feel lost. There are nights when the quiet is oppressive. There are times when the ground beneath your feet vanishes. Because standing by yourself is also a part of selecting yourself. You might leave partnerships that don't represent your development. You might abandon occupations that used to define you but now feel like jails. Belief systems that previously gave you comfort may become confining when you grow out of them. You may grieve too, profoundly, because embracing who you are also entails letting go of the aspects of yourself that you used to belong somewhere else. However, be aware that the loneliness you experience is spaciousness rather than emptiness. Before the becoming, there is a clearing. The wings come after the chrysalis. According to Jung, the mind will stop at nothing to prevent its own metamorphosis, until the agony of staying the same becomes intolerable. That is the point at which change starts, as a surrendering act rather than an act of will. And when you give up, you start to encounter life in a new way. You find beauty in unexpected places. Being yourself makes you feel more alive. Relationships that represent your wholeness rather than your wounds start to come your way. You understand that making the decision to be yourself was always for the benefit of the world, not just you. When someone has regained their identity, they become a mirror, a catalyst, and a permission slip. Unconsciously, you inspire others to be real when you shine as yourself. True healing spreads like this, not by coercion, not by preaching, but by being there, and everything is altered. You don't have to seek approval anymore. You are sufficient on your own. Rejection is no longer a dread of yours. You've already made your decision. Your truth is no longer a secret. You now call it home. You will still fall, of course, still unsure. I still forget. The difference now, though, is that you get back sooner. You recall more quickly. You have more empathy for yourself, because you can never completely betray your truth after you have encountered the self and stood in it. People, pleasing, forgiving, and shrinking are outdated tactics that no longer work. Behind the curtain, you have seen. The sacred has been touched by you. You have sensed your own soul's foundation, and your compass is that knowing, that profound, silent knowledge. The outside world might still be in disarray. You may still face difficulties in relationships. Your bravery may still be put to the test by your dreams, but now you walk in a new way, rooted, unambiguous, complete. The trip does not end here. It never ends. The mind is limitless. Over the course of a lifetime, the self becomes clear. However, an irreversible process has started. Your tale is no longer someone else's. You're authoring it yourself. The first thing to realize is that you are not too much. It's not too late. You're not damaged. You're evolving. This hallowed spiral into the core of your being is the next step in the trip. The world doesn't suddenly get easier when you make the decision to be yourself. However, it does grow more truthful, more in agreement, more authentic. As you have entered the deep, you are no longer living on the surface of life, responding to waves, and you find a different type of power in that depth. The strength to give up, not the power to control. It is the strength to stand steadfastly in your own presence, not the strength to dominate. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakens, wrote Carl Jung. This awakening is the act of choosing oneself. You can't go back to sleep comfortably once you're up. You start to view the unconsciously occurring patterns in your life as teachers rather than as failures. Maps were the connections that shattered you. They were mirror betrayals. They were invitations to the breakdowns. Because it made room for truth within you, even the suffering was precious. The person you used to be, the one who put others before themselves, who stifled their voices, who dimmed their light, was trying to fit in as best they could. You now understand, however, that genuine belonging starts with self-belonging, and that makes all the difference. You start listening in a new way. You pay attention to energy as much as words. You can sense when something is in alignment, and when it isn't. You follow your instincts, not out of fear but wisdom. The old urge to justify oneself starts to fade, because you will be less inclined to ask for permission as you grow more authentic. When you make this decision for yourself, this is what occurs. You become more introspective and less reactive. You get better at pausing before acting. You speak to express rather than to impress. Half living, half truths, and half love are no longer acceptable to you. Instead of living from your wounds, you start to live from your center, and people take notice. Your lucidity will attract some. Your light will cause discomfort to others. However, it's not your responsibility to make them feel uncomfortable. For the sake of your soul, it is your responsibility to shine. Because the world needs more individuals who have made their own decisions based on integrity rather than ego. The paradox is that you can love someone more deeply the more you choose yourself. Not because of dependence, not from the show, but from being there. And People are no longer necessary to complete you. You don't love out of need. You love out of fullness. And that is a brilliant, uncommon kind of love. The kind that retains its identity while retaining space. The kind that does not rescue, but nurtures. Kind of like, I see you. Since I have witnessed myself, your connections change. When you make a decision for yourself, some disappear, some change with time, some come in fresh. Your inner alignment, however, is the one constant, and your sanctuary is that inner balance. You are home, even in the midst of chaos. You remain anchored, even in the face of uncertainty. You are entire, even while you are broken, because you have encountered the self, the immense, timeless, and unalterable center of who you are. According to Jung, psychological life has the self as its source and end, the blueprint underneath the mask. Under your identities, your routines, and your grief, the completeness that has always resided within you waits quietly, and remembering that you were never merely a role to be played is what it is to awaken that self, to unfold. You are a soul. It's not a noisy unfolding, it isn't always apparent. In a world full of noise, it is frequently a silent act of rebellion. It is abandoning a discussion that denigrates your soul, refusing without feeling guilty, making without worrying about criticism, having joy without having to explain it. It is emerging, untamed, unmasked, and unfiltered. And each time you do, you are taking back your identity from a society that attempted to make you feel lesser. Revolt for the sake of revolt is not what this is. It's a moment of remembering. Remembering who you were before society dictated who you should be. Remember the voice that was always whispering inside of you. Remembering the holy mission you were sent to accomplish. Just by being who you are, there will be sorrow, indeed. Sadness for the years you slept. Feel sorry for the person you left behind. Weep for the life you believed you desired before you realized it was not for you. But underlying that sorrow lies thankfulness. Thank you for the crucibles, the collapses, and the fissures. Because you might not have woken up without them. It's possible that you were never picked. You walk differently today. You take a deeper breath. You have an air of reverence rather than haughtiness. Because you understand the wonder of self, return, and the price of self-betrayal. You now know that the soul doesn't yell, it murmurs. You've also improved your listening skills. You now know that healing is genuine, even though it is not linear. That fullness means integration, not perfection. That freedom is the presence of truth rather than the absence of fear. You now understand that your suffering is your gateway, not your punishment. You now stand at a threshold, one of embodiment rather than flight. You're not waiting to be picked by the world. You've already made your decision, not once, but every day in each and every limit you maintain. In all of the truths you express. I am here as expressed in each breath you take. I am important. I am evolving. And you become a light as you develop, not because you are more radiant than others, but rather because you are no longer in hiding. That is the strength of self, determination. To integrate, not to divide. To liberate, not to dominate. To live, not to prove. And thus the trip goes on, within rather than outward, aiming for presence rather than perfection. You're not in the rear. You're not damaged. It's not too late. You are exactly when you need to be. And just go back to the silence if you ever forget. To the breath, to the mirror, to the dream. To the child who is still yearning to be heard inside of you. Because you already know in your heart you're not performing here. To remember you are here. To get up. To go back. To recover the self that was buried but never lost. And you're uncovering it now. When you ultimately put yourself first. This is what occurs. Additionally, in doing so, you don't give up on the planet. You start to mend it. One soul at a time awakens. One truthful deed at a time. Remembering one breath at a time. So take a deep breath. Take a proud stance. And make another decision. And once more. And once more. Until your truth is reflected in your life. Until the poem is your presence. Until you recall. The person you've been waiting for is you.